Hey Blackbird Pond Group, how's it going? How'd you enjoy Chapter 2 and getting to learn a little bit more about Kit and her view of America, maybe her not so popular view of America? When we first meet her, she's kind of cruising up the river. And how does she feel about this? What does she think about the whole no wind? They're barely going. Why are they barely going? Why is it not windy? Why does it seem so slow to her? Remember, she just crossed the ocean from Barbados. Why would it be so slow now? You want to hit pause and discuss for me? Okay, what did you come up with? Well, as she goes on, she kind of offends a few people along the way. And she does see that she's not patient. We notice that. But she sees the little girl. And she sees the little girl out on the ship. And it says on the bottom of page 16, as they stood side by side, a crane rose slowly from the beach with a gradual lift of its wings. And they followed its flight, a leisurely line of white against the dark trees. What kind of symbol could that be? What could our author try to tell us? Think of a beautiful white crane against the dark trees. Who could the crane be? Who could the trees be? What do you think? It's not right or wrong answer. I just want to know what you think. I'm going to hit pause and discuss a little bit. Back? Okay. Well, as Kit's standing there looking at the little girl, she realizes, I haven't seen that doll since I jumped in and rescued it. Where's the doll? What do you think happened to this doll? Why isn't this little girl allowed to play with the doll her grandfather made her? What does that tell us about her mom? What does that tell us about the community in which she lives in and what they value? What do you think? Hit pause and discuss for me. Why is this doll so important? Why is Kit going to notice this? Well, she gets kind of lonely on the voyage. Not anybody really talks to her. Remember, they all think she's a witch because she jumped in the water and she swam. And Nat likes to tease her about it. And she gets kind of frustrated with Nat. But she's talking to John. And remember, John is on his way to study under another pastor in the same town that Kit is going to. And so she talks to John, and she likes to talk to John because, she says he'll deliberately mark his page. He'll shut his book. And she says at the top of page 19, such frank talk about money embarrassed Kit. Why would this embarrass Kit? How were women treated during this time in regards to money? Were they allowed to make the decisions? Did they get to partake in any decisions in how the money was spent in the house? What does that tell us about Kit and about women in general in this society during this time? Now, how has it changed? How has it changed from this time to now? We find out on the bottom of page 19 a little bit more about Kit's story. She says, I don't remember my parents at all. My father was born on the island and was sent to England to school. He met my mother there and brought her back to Barbados with him. They had only 3 years to go. They were both drowned in a pleasure trip to Antigua, and grandfather and I were left alone. So from the time she was an infant, she has never had the opportunity to know her mom and dad. What do you think that's done for her? It sounds to me like her grandfather took very good care of her. On page, I guess it's a little bit longer in there, but on page 24, she says she picks up one of his books and she starts reading. Last night, for instance, she's talking about a time that John got frustrated with her on page 24. Last night, for instance, she had reached impulsively for the volume he held, opened it at the marked page, squinting curiously at the words in the wan light, had read aloud, and she reads the passage, and she says, is this what you read all day long? And she looks up to find John just staring at her. And he says, you can read? How did you learn to read when you say you just ran wild like a savage and never did any work? Do you call reading work? It's not work. I don't even remember how I learned. When it was too hot to play, Grandfather would take me to his library where it was dark and cool and read to me out loud from his books when I'd sit beside him. And we read plays and history and poetry, and John's voice gets incredulous. Plays? What do you mean plays? Oh, she says they were wonderful. They were beautiful. There are no such books in Saybrook, John says, in Boston. But the proper use of reading is to improve our sinful nature and to fill our minds with God's holy word. Again, this is going to show a little bit of the difference between the culture in which Kit grows up and the culture in which she is now going to live in a very puritanistic society. Now, while she's very scholarly in some areas, like she knows how to read, we find out early in the chapter she didn't really understand the whole slavery issue. She complains to Nat about the stench of the stables, and he's like, yeah, you'd rather have hundreds of people chained to the bottom. And she's like, what? What do you mean, chained to the bottom? And he's like, where do you think all the slaves come from? I'm on 23. And she said, I never even thought about it. She had never thought about it at all. But don't you have slaves in America? Yes, to our shame. Mostly folk down in Virginia. But there are plenty of fine folk like you here in New England who will pay a fat price for black flesh without asking any questions how it got here. If my father would consent to bring back just one load of slaves, we would have enough to have our new catch by this summer. But we Eatons, we're mighty proud that our ship is good, honest stink of horses. So they have integrity. The Eatons have a great deal of integrity. They will not ship human beings chained down in the cargo area. Horses, animals, livestock, yes, but they are not going to ship human beings. And Kit before had never really thought about how the slaves would come from Africa to Barbados, to America. And he's saying nobody does. Nobody thinks about the travesty, not only of owning slaves, but in how they arrived here in the first place. So on one hand, while we notice that Kit can read, and she's scholarly, on the other hand, she's very naive. Now, how do you think that combination, that scholar plus that naivety, how is that going to play out in the story? What do you think, what problems could that possibly cause Kit in her new home? I'll give you a minute. Talking to your group. At the end of chapter 2, Kit finally makes it to Wethersfield. And the captain says there must be some mistake. I expected that your aunt and uncle would be here to meet you, no matter how early it might be. Captain Eaton, she said boldly, my aunt and uncle can hardly be blamed for not meeting me. Well, they don't even know I'm coming. So here she is coming from Barbados. She has no family left. The only family she has are this aunt and uncle. And she didn't even let them know she was coming. So put yourself in the aunt and uncle's shoes right now. Okay, they're not wealthy people. It's not like having another mouth to feed is going to be easy for them. Here, this stranger from another culture with different values and different morals, and she does not like Puritans, we found that out very early on, is coming to live with them. How do you think that is going to react? What kind of a conflict could that possibly cause? Put that down in your discussion. How would you feel? And the captain is shocked. He's like, well, how would you even know that they're still here? And she says, my Aunt Slutter came only 6 months ago. I figured they'd be here. What would have happened if she would have arrived in this Connecticut town and her aunt and uncle were gone? It's not like she could go out and get an easy job at that time. It's not like she had any place to stay. So she took out an entire trip on faith, just hoping they would be there, hoping that somebody would be there to take care of her. Could you do that? Could you just up and go and just have faith that it's all going to work out? Think of people that you know who have done this. What do you think about that? All right. Well, then in chapter 3, we're going to meet her infamous aunt and uncle and see how this all plays out. So your final discussion is to not only talk about what you think, how this is going to play out, but I want you to talk about what you think of Kit as a person, as a character in general. What type of a young woman is she? And would she be somebody that you could see yourself hanging out with? Do you think she'd be a lot of fun? Do you think she'd be too snooty? What type of a woman do you see when you see Kit? All right, enjoy chapter 3. We will see you tomorrow. Great job, everybody.